The story of life on Earth is written in chapters of rock and time. Our journey takes us to the very last page of the longest and most spectacular of these chapters, the Age of Reptiles. We arrive in a world 66 million years ago, a time of giants poised on the precipice of unimaginable change. This is the Late Cretaceous period, a world both familiar and alien. The continents are nearing their modern positions, and seasons mark the passage of time. Warm, wet summers give way to cool, darker winters. The landscape is a vibrant tapestry of green, dominated by vast floodplains and dense forests. Here, flowering plants, a recent evolutionary innovation, grow alongside ancient lineages of ferns, cycads, and towering conifers. This is the Hell Creek Formation of North America, one of the most studied windows into the final days of the dinosaurs. It was a world teeming with life, a complex and dynamic ecosystem that had been millions of years in the making. But it was an ecosystem living on borrowed time. An ancient drama was playing out its final act, and on this grand stage walked one of its most iconic and formidable players. Out of the dappled light of a prehistoric forest, a titan emerges. It moves with the deliberate, ponderous grace of a creature that fears little. This is Triceratops. Its name, derived from Greek, means three-horned face, a simple descriptor for one of the most recognizable animals in all of history. Standing nearly 10 feet tall at the hips and stretching 30 feet long, it was as large as an elephant but built like a walking fortress. Its body is a massive barrel of muscle and bone, supported by 4 stout, pillar-like legs. A short, powerful tail provides a counterbalance to its most extraordinary feature, its colossal head. The skull alone could be over 8 feet long, nearly a third of the animal's total length. It is a masterpiece of biological engineering, a shield and a weapon in one. From this immense head, 3 formidable horns jut forward. 2 long brow horns above the eyes and a shorter but no less effective horn on its nose. This was a creature born to dominate its environment. A magnificent herbivore that represented a pinnacle of evolution. The headgear of Triceratops is its defining feature, a subject of fascination and debate since its discovery. The immense bony frill, or shield, that sweeps back from its skull was once thought to be purely for defense, a near-impenetrable barrier to protect its vulnerable neck from the crushing jaws of a predator like Tyrannosaurus rex. While it certainly served this purpose, modern paleontology reveals a more complex story. The surface of the frill and horns was not bare bone. It was covered in keratin, the same material as our fingernails, and crisscrossed with deep grooves that once housed a rich network of blood vessels. This suggests the frill could have been a radiator to regulate body temperature, or, more tantalizingly, a vibrant display structure. Flushed with blood, it could have blazed with color, a billboard used for species recognition, to intimidate rivals, or to attract a mate. The horns, too, were likely multi-purpose tools. Beyond defense, they were probably used in ritualized combat between males, locking horns in contests of strength to establish dominance and win breeding rights, much like modern stags or rhinos. How did this Cretaceous titan live? Was it a solitary wanderer or a social creature moving in vast herds? The image of immense herds of Triceratops migrating across the plains is a powerful one, often depicted in popular culture. However, the fossil evidence paints a more nuanced picture. Unlike some of its ceratopsian relatives, like Centrosaurus, which are known for massive bone beds containing hundreds or even thousands of individuals who perished together, such mass graves of Triceratops are exceptionally rare. This suggests they may not have formed the vast, sweeping herds we often imagine. Instead, the evidence points towards a more solitary existence, or perhaps small, intimate family groups. We can picture a mother guiding her young, or a small band of adults and subadults moving together through the forests and fern prairies. This doesn't diminish their success. In fact, Triceratops is one of the most common dinosaurs found in the Hell Creek Formation, indicating it was a thriving and abundant part of its ecosystem, dominating the landscape not through sheer numbers in a single herd, but through its widespread and successful population. To fuel a body weighing upwards of 10 tons requires a voracious appetite and highly specialized feeding equipment. Triceratops was a herbivore, a plant-eating engine finely tuned to process the tough vegetation of the Late Cretaceous. Its mouth was a testament to efficiency. At the front was a sharp, narrow beak devoid of teeth, which acted like a powerful set of shears. With immense jaw muscles, it could snap through thick cycad fronds, woody shrubs, and fibrous ferns with ease. Once snipped, the vegetation was passed back to the cheeks, where the real processing began. Here, Triceratops possessed one of nature's most incredible innovations, dental batteries. Hundreds of teeth were packed together in tight columns, forming a broad grinding surface. As the top teeth wore down, new ones from the column below would erupt to replace them, ensuring a sharp and effective grinding mill throughout the animal's life. This creature was a bulk feeder, a low-browsing specialist that methodically cleared patches of vegetation, playing a crucial role as a keystone herbivore in shaping the prehistoric landscape around it. Triceratops did not live in isolation. It was a key player in one of the most famous and well-studied prehistoric ecosystems. The floodplains of Hell Creek were a crowded stage. Herds of the duck-billed Edmontosaurus, some of the most common dinosaurs of the time, browsed alongside it. The heavily armored Ankylosaurus, a living tank covered in bony plates and ending in a formidable tail club, trudged through the undergrowth. Smaller, swifter dinosaurs like the ostrich-like Ornithomimus darted through the open spaces. And towering over them all was the undisputed apex predator, Tyrannosaurus rex. For decades, the relationship between these two icons has been cast as a simple tale of hunter and hunted. Fossil evidence, including T-Rex bite marks on Triceratops' frills and horns, some of which show signs of healing, confirms that these confrontations did happen. But it was more than that. It was a 66-million-year-old arms race. As the predators evolved more powerful bites, the prey evolved more formidable defenses. Triceratops, with its shield and horns, was the ultimate defensive answer to the ultimate predator. Of all the incredible creatures that inhabited this lost world, Triceratops holds a special distinction. It was not an early experiment or a transitional form. It was a crowning achievement of dinosaur evolution, a species at the zenith of its power and proliferation. Its fossils are found in the highest, and therefore youngest, rock layers of the Mesozoic era. This tells us that Triceratops thrived right up to the very end. It was one of the last non-avian dinosaurs to walk the Earth. It witnessed the final sunset of the Cretaceous. We can imagine this magnificent animal standing defiant against a world on the brink of catastrophe, unaware of the cosmic event that would soon bring the 150-million-year reign of the dinosaurs to a sudden and fiery close. Its story did not end with a slow decline into extinction, but in a final, dramatic curtain fall. Today, its mighty skull, one of the most prized and recognizable fossils in the world, serves as a powerful symbol of a lost age, an icon of the Cretaceous, and a testament to the majesty of life before our own. Triceratops, a name that echoes through 66 million years of silence. A 10-ton behemoth, a walking fortress of horn and bone. It was one of the last and most magnificent dinosaurs to have ever walked the Earth. But this titan did not spring into existence fully formed. Its story is not one of sudden creation, but of a grand evolutionary saga, a 100-million-year odyssey that began with a creature a fraction of its size on a different continent altogether. Our journey back in time takes us to the late Jurassic period of Asia, around 160 million years ago. In the undergrowth of a fern-filled forest, we find one of the earliest known ancestors of the ceratopsian lineage, Yinlong Downsi, the hidden dragon. It was small, swift, and bipedal, no larger than a fox. It had no horns, no frill, nothing to suggest the giants that would follow. But it held a secret. At the very tip of its upper jaw was a small, unique bone called the rostral. This unassuming feature, the foundation for a beak, was the evolutionary seed from which an entire dynasty of horned dinosaurs would grow. Millions of years passed. The world changed, and so did the descendants of Yinlong. In the early Cretaceous, across the landscapes of Asia, a new and phenomenally successful group emerged, the Psittacosaurus, or parrot lizard. Though still primarily bipedal, Psittacosaurus was larger and more robust. Its defining feature was its namesake, a deep, powerful, and unmistakably parrot-like beak, perfect for slicing through the tough vegetation of its time. For over 30 million years, this genus thrived, diversifying into numerous species. Fossil discoveries have painted an unusually detailed picture of their lives, from nests of hatchlings suggesting parental care, to incredible specimens preserving not just bones, but skin impressions and even more. One fossil revealed a feature that stunned paleontologists: a row of long, hollow, bristle-like quills running down the top of its tail. These were not for defense, but likely for display, an early hint of the ceratopsian obsession with visual communication. Psittacosaurus was a testament to the power of adaptation, an evolutionary success story that laid the groundwork for the next great leap. The next chapter in ceratopsian evolution is written in bone at the back of the skull. As we move later into the Cretaceous, we meet forms like Archaeoceratops, the ancient horned face. While still small, it sported the next key innovation, a short, solid flange of bone extending backward from its skull. This was the first true frill, a rudimentary shield that marked a pivotal change in the ceratopsian body plan. This feature found its full early expression in a more famous cousin from the deserts of Mongolia, Protoceratops. Roughly the size of a sheep and now a committed quadruped, Protoceratops was a significant step towards the classic horned dinosaur form. Its frill was a broad, dramatic shield perforated with large openings to save weight. It had no true horns yet, but its powerful beak and flaring cheeks gave it a formidable appearance. This frill wasn't for fending off predators like the contemporary velociraptor. Instead, it was a billboard, a display structure for species recognition, and a massive anchor point for the powerful jaw muscles needed to process tough desert plants. Protoceratops was a blueprint for the giants to come. For tens of millions of years, the story of the ceratopsians was an exclusively Asian one, but the world of the late Cretaceous was a dynamic place. Tectonic forces shifted the continents, and changing sea levels periodically exposed land where there was once ocean. One such landmass was Beringia, a vast land bridge that connected the northeastern tip of Asia with the northwestern corner of North America. Across this corridor of life, a great migration began. Herds of early ceratopsians, driven by changing climates or population pressures, pushed eastward into a new continent. Here in North America, they found a land of opportunity, a vast canvas for evolution to paint upon. One of the earliest pioneers we know of from this new world is Zunoceratops. Discovered in New Mexico, this creature is a vital transitional fossil. It was relatively small and slender, but it possessed something no ceratopsian had before: two well-developed, sharp horns, one over each eye. It still lacked a horn on its nose, and its frill was simple, but these brow horns were a game-changer. The familiar three-horned face was beginning to take shape. The arrival in North America ignited an evolutionary firestorm. The ceratopsian lineage radiated with explosive speed, splitting into two great subfamilies that would dominate the landscapes of the late Cretaceous, the centrosaurinine and the chasmosaurinine. The centrosaurinines were often the masters of nasal ornamentation. They typically sported enormous horns on their noses, with smaller horns over their eyes, and their frills became canvases for some of nature's most flamboyant designs. A prime example is Tyrannosaurus, a living citadel of a dinosaur. Its nose bore a single, formidable blade-like horn, but its true glory was its frill, from which erupted a crown of at least 6 massive spikes, each several feet long. At the same time, the chasmosaurinines took a different evolutionary path. They emphasized their brow horns, growing them to incredible lengths, while their nasal horns were often modest. Their signature, however, was their frill. Genera like Chasmosaurus developed immense, long, rectangular frills, lightened by 2 huge openings, or fenestrae. These two great houses of horned dinosaurs coexisted, a spectacular example of evolutionary diversification, carving out different niches in the same lush ecosystems. This explosion of diversity begs the question, what was the purpose of this riot of cranial evolution? Why did ceratopsians develop such elaborate and varied horns and frills? The old idea of the frill as a purely defensive shield has largely been discarded. In many species, like Chasmosaurus, the frill was too thin and perforated to stop the bite of a tyrannosaur. The answer is likely far more complex and fascinating, centering on socio-sexual display. These incredible structures were not just shields, they were elaborate, intricate signals, billboards broadcasting an individual's health, maturity, and genetic fitness. Consider Cosmoceratops, the ornate horned face. It boasted 15 horns and horn-like structures, including a bizarre fringe of hooks that curled forward over its face. This wasn't for fighting a predator, it was for showing off to rivals and attracting mates, much like a peacock's tail. The arrangement of horns and spikes was a unique signature for each species, preventing interbreeding and allowing them to recognize their own kind in a world teeming with similar-looking relatives. The horns on the face, however, were a different matter. Sharp, powerful, and perfectly positioned as weapons for both defense and ritualized combat with rivals. Our journey through time now arrives at its destination, the final 2 million years of the Cretaceous period, the Maastrichtian Age. The inland sea that once divided North America has receded, and in the vast floodplain forests of the West, the ceratopsian dynasty reaches its zenith. Here walks Triceratops horridus, the final and most magnificent member of this grand lineage. The odyssey that began with the small, 2-legged yinlong in Asia culminates in this 10-ton, 4-legged titan. The tiny rostral bone has become a devastatingly powerful beak. The unadorned skull has evolved into a 3-horned weapon, and the simple neck shield has transformed into a solid, near-impenetrable wall of bone. Triceratops was the ultimate chasmosaurine. It possessed the family's signature long brow horns, but combined them with a robust nasal horn and a frill that had abandoned the weight-saving windows of its ancestors. This solid shield provided maximum protection and a massive area for jaw muscle attachment. It was a perfect fusion of form and function, a survivor forged by 100 million years of evolution, perfectly equipped for its world. A world it shared with the most fearsome predator of all time. To truly comprehend Triceratops, one must begin with its head. This is no mere anatomical feature. It is a masterpiece of biological engineering, a symbol of the late Cretaceous, and one of the largest and most extraordinary skulls ever to belong to a land animal. Reaching up to 2.5 meters in length, the skull of a fully grown Triceratops accounted for nearly a third of its entire body. It is a structure of immense weight and complexity, a fortress of solid bone that served as a multi-purpose tool for survival. When the first of these incredible fossils was unearthed, It was initially mistaken for the remains of a giant prehistoric bison. The mistake is understandable. The sheer size and the prominent horns spoke of a mammal, yet the truth was far more ancient and far more spectacular. This colossal head was the command center for the three-horned titan, equipped with a formidable arsenal for defense, elaborate decorations for social signaling, and a powerful apparatus for processing the tough vegetation of its world. In this single, magnificent structure, we find the keys to understanding almost every aspect of this animal's life. The most iconic weapons in the Triceratops' arsenal were its two magnificent brow horns. Composed of a solid bone core that could exceed a meter in length, these horns were not merely for show. In life, they would have been covered in a sheath of keratin, the same material that forms the horns of modern cattle, making them even longer, sharper, and more durable. These were lethal armaments, perfectly positioned to protect the animal's eyes and face. Their primary function was almost certainly defense against the apex predator of its time, Tyrannosaurus rex. Biomechanical studies have shown these horns were incredibly strong, capable of withstanding immense pressure and impact. Imagine the scene: a charging Triceratops, 9 tons of muscle and bone, lowering its head to present a formidable wall of horns and shield. Puncture marks found on the fossilized frills and skulls of Triceratops, which perfectly match the teeth of a T-Rex, confirm that these confrontations were not just theoretical, they were a brutal reality of life in the Cretaceous. These horns were the last line of defense, the ultimate deterrent against the tyrant king. While the brow horns were clearly designed for formidable defense, the smaller horn on the snout presents a different puzzle. Shorter and more conical, the nasal horn's function has been a subject of intense debate among paleontologists. While it could certainly inflict a painful wound, it was not the primary weapon. Instead, evidence points towards a role in social dynamics, specifically combat between rival Triceratops. Like modern rhinos or stags, male Triceratops may have engaged in non-lethal shoving matches and ritualized duels for mating rights or territory. Locking their brow horns was risky, potentially resulting in catastrophic injury for both combatants. The nasal horn, however, was perfectly suited for pushing and jousting, allowing individuals to test each other's strength without resorting to deadly force. Scars and healed fractures found on the faces and frills of some specimens support this theory of intraspecific combat. These weren't battles to the death, but carefully choreographed contests of power, with the headgear serving as the centerpiece of the display, a testament to the owner's fitness and strength. Extending from the back of the skull is the Triceratops's other defining feature, the massive, bony frill. In some species, like Triceratops porsus, this could form an almost solid shield of bone, a veritable wall protecting the vulnerable neck and shoulders from attack. For many years, this was considered its sole purpose, a passive defense against the bone-crushing jaws of a Tyrannosaurus. The outer edge of this frill was adorned with a series of smaller triangular bones called epiccipitals. These bony nodules gave the frill a scalloped, saw-toothed appearance, adding another layer of defense and perhaps making it more difficult for a predator to gain a secure bite. The sheer thickness and robust construction of the frill in mature adults lends strong support to its role as a shield. It effectively armored the animal's most critical connection between head and body, turning a potential weak point into a near impenetrable fortress. When a Triceratops faced a predator, it wasn't just presenting horns, it was presenting an almost entirely armored head, a challenge few predators would take lightly. But the frill was much more than just a simple shield. Fossil evidence reveals that its surface was covered in a complex network of grooves and channels, indicating it was richly supplied with blood vessels. This has led to a fascinating hypothesis. The frill may have functioned as a giant radiator and a dynamic display structure. By pumping blood to the surface, a Triceratops could have dissipated excess body heat, a crucial ability for such a large active animal. Conversely, this blood flow could have suffused the skin covering the frill with vibrant color. Imagine a frill that could blush, changing from a muted tone to a brilliant red or blue in seconds. It would have been a living billboard, broadcasting the animal's health, mood, or intent to rivals and potential mates across great distances. Furthermore, this enormous bony platform provided a massive anchor point for some of the most powerful jaw muscles in the animal kingdom. The frill wasn't just for defense or display. It was an integral part of the machinery that powered Triceratops's formidable bite, a truly multifunctional marvel. When we combine the functions of the horns and the frill, a picture emerges of a highly social animal for whom the head was the primary tool of communication. The sheer diversity in frill shape and horn configuration among different ceratopsian species suggests these features were crucial for species recognition. A Triceratops could identify one of its own at a glance, distinguishing it from a contemporary like Torosaurus. Within a herd, this headgear likely played a vital role in establishing a social hierarchy. The size, shape, and condition of an individual's horns and frill, perhaps enhanced by vibrant flushing colors, would signal its age, health, and dominance. A large male with an impressive, unblemished frill and long, symmetrical horns would have been an imposing figure, perhaps winning mating rights without ever needing to engage in physical conflict. For a female, a male's headgear would be a clear advertisement of his genetic quality. The head of Triceratops was a social billboard, constantly broadcasting a wealth of information to all who saw it, shaping the complex life of the herd. Beneath the dramatic horns and frill lay the business end of the skull, the mouth. Triceratops was a herbivore, but it was no gentle grazer. It was a bulk feeder, equipped with specialized anatomy to process incredible quantities of the tough, fibrous plants of the Cretaceous, such as cycads and palms. At the front of its mouth was a large, toothless beak, narrow and sharp, much like that of a parrot. This powerful beak was perfect for cropping, snipping, and breaking tough stems and branches. Further back, hidden behind its cheeks, lay the real engine of consumption, the dental batteries. Triceratops possessed hundreds of teeth, stacked vertically in columns. As the teeth at the top wore down from grinding coarse plant matter, new, sharp teeth from the column below would erupt to replace them, ensuring a continuously effective cutting surface. The immense muscles anchored to the frill powered these jaws, creating a powerful shearing action that sliced vegetation into easily digestible pieces. The head of Triceratops was a complete survival kit, a defensive fortress, a social beacon, and a highly efficient processing plant for fueling its colossal body. The immense bulk of a Triceratops was not built on aggression, but on appetite. To maintain its multi-ton frame, this dinosaur was a voracious, non-stop eating machine, a plant-powered behemoth that shaped the very landscape it inhabited. Its life was a constant quest for fuel, an endless search for the vegetation needed to power its massive body. But the world of the Late Cretaceous was not a gentle garden. It was filled with tough, fibrous, and often abrasive plants, a far cry from the soft grasses of the modern day. Feeding here required more than just a big stomach. It demanded a specialized toolkit of unparalleled efficiency. The story of the Triceratops's survival is, in large part, the story of its mouth. It is an evolutionary masterpiece of bone, muscle, and keratin, engineered to conquer a challenging botanical world. From the tip of its beak to the back of its jaws, every element was honed for the singular purpose of processing immense quantities of the Cretaceous's hardiest flora, turning woody cycads and resilient ferns into the energy required to fuel a titan. The initial assault on this tough vegetation began with a formidable weapon, the beak. Composed of bone and covered in a sharp, self-sharpening sheath of keratin, much like that of a modern parrot or turtle, the Triceratops's beak was a powerful cropping tool. It was narrow and pointed, perfectly designed not for grazing, but for selective, powerful plucking and shearing. Imagine it moving through a dense grove of cycads. With a swift, decisive motion of its powerful neck, the animal could hook this beak around a thick stem or woody branch and, with a single snap, sever it cleanly. This wasn't delicate browsing. It was botanical demolition. This sharp, precise instrument allowed Triceratops to target specific parts of plants, perhaps the most nutritious fronds or cones, while ignoring less desirable foliage. The strength of this beak meant that few plants were off-limits. It provided the first crucial step in a complex digestive process, reducing large, unmanageable plant parts into smaller, more processable pieces before they even entered the mouth proper. Once inside the mouth, the plant matter faced its next challenge, one of the most sophisticated dental arrangements in the animal kingdom. Triceratops did not have simple, peg-like teeth. Instead, it possessed a true dental battery. Hundreds of teeth were packed tightly into columns, called magazines, with up to 5 teeth stacked vertically in each position. At any given time, only the topmost tooth in each column was in use, forming a continuous shearing surface. As these upper teeth wore down against the tough plant material, they would fall out and be immediately replaced by the next tooth in the column moving up from below. This system ensured a perpetually sharp and effective grinding surface throughout the animal's life. The upper and lower teeth didn't grind against each other in a simple up and down motion. Instead, the jaws moved with a near-vertical shearing action, slicing the vegetation like a pair of self-sharpening garden shears, shredding fibrous material into a pulp with remarkable efficiency. This was nature's solution to extreme dental wear. So, what exactly was on the menu for this three-horned titan? Fossilized stomach contents are incredibly rare, but paleobotanical evidence from late Cretaceous North America, combined with the biomechanics of the Triceratops's mouth, paints a vivid picture. This was not an animal that could graze on grass, as grasses had not yet evolved to cover the plains. Instead, its primary food sources were low-growing but incredibly tough plants. Cycads, with their woody trunks and stiff, palm-like fronds, were almost certainly a staple. Ancient ferns, which formed a dense understory in the forests, would have been consumed in vast quantities. It's also likely that Triceratops fed on early flowering plants and perhaps even primitive palms when available. These plants were highly fibrous and contained silica, a gritty, abrasive substance that would rapidly wear down teeth. The Triceratops's specialized beak and ever-replacing dental batteries were the perfect evolutionary answer to this challenging, low-quality diet, allowing it to thrive on vegetation that other herbivores might have found indigestible or simply too difficult to process. The sheer efficiency of the beak and teeth was powered by an incredible engine of muscle. The skull of Triceratops reveals the anchor points for truly massive jaw muscles. Its iconic frill, often viewed solely as a defensive or display structure, also served as a huge attachment site for the powerful muscles that closed the lower jaw. This anatomical arrangement provided tremendous leverage, allowing Triceratops to generate an immense bite force. When it brought its jaws together, it wasn't just a simple slice. It was a devastatingly powerful shear. This force was essential for dealing with the woody, resilient nature of its food. It could have effortlessly sliced through branches several inches thick. The deep lower jaw and robust skull were built to withstand the immense and repetitive stresses of processing thousands of pounds of tough vegetation every single day. The entire head was a biomechanical marvel, a testament to the evolutionary pressures of a life spent chewing through the Cretaceous undergrowth, transforming immense power into precise, effective feeding. After being cropped by the beak and shredded by the dental batteries, the journey of the plant matter was far from over. Processing such fibrous material required a complex and capacious digestive system. Like many large herbivores today, Triceratops did not chew its food into a fine paste in the way a mammal does. The primary goal of its oral processing was to increase the surface area of the plant fibers. The real breakdown would have occurred internally. To accomplish this, Triceratops almost certainly possessed a huge fermentation vat within its gut, likely housing a complex microbiome of bacteria and other microorganisms. These microscopic partners would have done the hard work of breaking down cellulose, the tough structural component of plants, unlocking the vital nutrients within. This necessity for a large gut is reflected in the animal's anatomy. A deep, wide rib cage and a broad pelvis supported a vast abdominal cavity. The Triceratops wasn't just large, it was barrel-chested, a living, walking digestive factory, essential for powering its colossal body on a diet of prehistoric roughage. The result of these remarkable adaptations, the sharp beak, the self-replacing dental batteries, the powerful jaw muscles, and the voluminous gut, was an herbivore of unparalleled success. Triceratops was not just surviving on the available flora, it was thriving. Its feeding apparatus allowed it to exploit a food resource that was abundant but difficult for many other animals to access. This dietary advantage fueled its enormous size, its complex social behaviors, and its ability to dominate the North American landscape for millions of years. It was a keystone species, an ecological engineer whose constant browsing would have shaped the structure of the forests and plains it called home. The three-horned titan was, at its core, a testament to the power of specialized herbivory. Its story reminds us that in the grand theater of prehistory, the battles for survival were won not only with horns and shields, but with the patient, relentless, and perfectly adapted mechanics of turning plants into power. The name Triceratops conjures a powerful image, a solitary giant, a three-horned bastion of defense against the carnivores of the Late Cretaceous. For decades, this was the prevailing portrait, an animal of immense power, but one that faced its world alone. But is this picture accurate? The cold, silent testimony of fossilized bone often preserves anatomy with stunning clarity, yet whispers only secrets about behavior. How an animal lived, how it interacted with its own kind, is one of the most challenging puzzles in paleontology. Did Triceratops wander the fern prairies of North America as lonely titans, or did they, like the great herbivores of today's savannas, find strength and safety in numbers? The answer lies buried in stone, in rare geological snapshots that preserve not just one animal, but many. To uncover the social life of this iconic dinosaur, we must dig deeper, beyond the story of a single skeleton, and into the much grander, more complex chronicle of a community. Our quest begins in the Hell Creek Formation of Montana, a rich repository of the final chapter of the dinosaur age. Here, in 1997, paleontologist Jack Horner and his team unearthed a discovery that would fundamentally challenge the image of the solitary Triceratops. It was not a single specimen, but a chaotic jumble of bones, a dinosaur graveyard. This type of site is known as a bone bed, an accumulation of remains from multiple individuals in one location. This particular bed contained the fossils of at least 3 juvenile Triceratops. A single bone bed could be a fluke, a tragic accident where unrelated animals were washed together by a flood. But as more sites emerged, a pattern began to form. In southeastern Montana, another site revealed an even larger group. The evidence was mounting that these were not random collections. They were potential echoes of ancient herds, groups of animals that lived and perhaps died together. These fossilized congregations are the closest we can get to a photograph of dinosaur social behavior, a frozen moment capturing a community's final hours. The most compelling evidence from these bone beds comes not just from the number of animals, but from who they were. Paleontologists can determine the age of a dinosaur by studying the microstructure of its bones, much like reading the rings of a tree. When applied to the individuals in a Triceratops bone bed, a fascinating social structure is revealed. These were not simply nurseries of the very young, nor were they bachelor pods of rogue males. The assemblages consist of a mix of ages, from young juveniles to mature, fully grown adults. This demographic profile is inconsistent with a chance aggregation at a drying waterhole, which would typically attract all animals in an area regardless of age. Instead, it strongly suggests a stable, multi-generational group, a true herd. We see a social unit where younger, more vulnerable members were likely surrounded and protected by larger, more experienced adults. This was a family, extended and ancient, moving across the landscape as a single, cohesive entity, a fortress of horns and frills on the move. For a large herbivore in a world populated by titanic predators, herding is a masterclass in survival strategy. The primary threat to Triceratops was, of course, the apex predator of its time, Tyrannosaurus rex. A single adult Triceratops, at 9 tons, was a formidable opponent, but a lone individual, especially if young, old, or sick, would be vulnerable. A herd, however, changes the equation entirely. It presents a wall of horns, a confusing mass of bodies that makes it difficult for a predator to single out a target. This is the power of collective defense. The principle of many eyes means that a threat is likely to be spotted sooner, giving the group precious time to react. In the face of a T-Rex attack, a herd could form a defensive circle, shielding the young in the middle while presenting the predator with an impenetrable barrier of sharp brow horns. Living together wasn't just about company. It was a critical adaptation that allowed Triceratops to thrive in one of the most dangerous ecosystems Earth has ever known. Life within a herd requires more than just proximity. It demands communication. While we can never hear their calls, the anatomy of Triceratops provides clues to how they might have interacted. The most spectacular feature, the enormous bony frill, was likely far more than just a shield or an anchor for jaw muscles. Riddled with blood vessels, it could have been flushed with color, transforming it into a vibrant billboard for display. Different patterns, colors, or sizes could signal an individual's health, status, or mood to the rest of the herd. The horns, too, were not solely weapons against predators. Evidence of healed puncture wounds on the frills and skulls of some specimens, matching the shape of another Triceratops's horn, suggests they engaged in intraspecific combat. This was likely not mortal combat, but ritualized sparring matches to establish dominance and hierarchy within the herd, deciding who had priority access to mates or prime grazing spots. These were complex social animals, using their iconic headgear as a sophisticated toolkit for navigating their social world. However, the case for constant, massive herds is not entirely closed. Science thrives on debate, and alternative interpretations exist. Some paleontologists argue that the bone beds, while intriguing, might still represent temporary gatherings. Perhaps Triceratops, primarily solitary or living in small family groups, would congregate in larger numbers only during specific seasons, for migration or around dwindling resources like water during a drought. Under this model, a natural disaster during such a gathering could create a bone bed without implying a permanent herd structure. It's also notable that the Triceratops bone beds, while significant, are generally smaller and less dense than the truly colossal bone beds of other ceratopsians, like Centrosaurus, which sometimes contain thousands of individuals and leave little doubt of their mass herding behavior. It is possible Triceratops had a more fluid social life, its behavior adapting to the circumstances. Sometimes alone, sometimes in a small family unit, and sometimes, when conditions demanded it, as part of a great assembly. So, where does this leave our understanding of the three-horned titan? The evidence, when weighed together, paints a picture far more complex and nuanced than the lone wanderer of old. The bone beds strongly suggest that Triceratops were, at the very least, capable of forming groups, and likely did so regularly. The mix of ages within these groups points towards a stable, multi-generational structure. The evolutionary advantages of herding in their predator-rich environment are undeniable, and their unique anatomy seems perfectly suited for the complex communication required for social living. While the exact size and permanence of their herds remain a topic of active research, the solitary monster has been replaced by a social strategist. Triceratops was a dinosaur that understood the fundamental power of community. They were giants who navigated their world not just with horns and shields of bone, but with the collective strength of the herd, a family of titans marching together through the twilight of the Cretaceous. In the waning light of the Late Cretaceous, 66 million years ago, the floodplains of western North America were a theater of giants. This was a world painted in lush greens and volcanic grays, a landscape of towering conifers, sprawling ferns, and flowering magnolias, all thriving under a humid, subtropical sky. But this primordial paradise was also an arena, home to one of the most iconic rivalries in the history of life on Earth. On this ancient stage, two titans were locked in an evolutionary struggle for survival. In one corner, the indomitable herbivore, Triceratops, a three-horned, three-ton bulwark of defense and determination. In the other, the undisputed sovereign of this lost world, Tyrannosaurus rex, the most formidable terrestrial predator ever to walk the planet. Their story is not one of simple predator and prey. It is a complex narrative of attack and defense, of adaptation and counter-adaptation, an arms race written in bone and buried for millennia. This is the story of a clash that defined an entire ecosystem, a battle for supremacy at the very end of the Age of Dinosaurs. To comprehend this epic conflict, we must first understand the hunter. Tyrannosaurus rex was a marvel of predatory evolution, a creature engineered for a single, terrifying purpose: to kill. Standing over 12 feet tall at the hips and stretching 40 feet from snout to tail, its sheer size was a weapon. But its true lethality lay in the details. Its eyes, unlike those of many other dinosaurs, were forward-facing, granting it superb binocular vision and the depth perception crucial for judging distance to moving prey. Its brain had massive olfactory bulbs, suggesting a sense of smell so acute it could track its victims over vast distances. Yet, its most devastating feature was its jaw. Housing dozens of serrated, railroad spike-sized teeth, this was not a mouth designed for slicing, but for crushing. Biomechanical studies estimate its bite force was the strongest of any land animal in Earth's history, capable of shattering the bones of even the most heavily armored dinosaurs. Every aspect of the Tyrannosaurus, from its powerful legs to its reinforced skull, was honed to perfection for tackling the largest and most dangerous prey its world had to offer. But the world of the Tyrannosaurus was not filled with easy meals. To survive, its prey had to evolve equally impressive capabilities. And none were more formidable than Triceratops. This was not a passive victim, it was a living fortress. Its most striking feature was its immense skull, which could reach over 8 feet in length, nearly a third of its entire body. This skull was dominated by a massive solid bone frill. While it may have served a role in display and species recognition, its primary function was likely defensive, a shield protecting its vulnerable neck from the bone-crushing jaws of a T-Rex. And then there were the horns. 2 immense brow horns, each potentially over 3 feet long, and a smaller but still dangerous nasal horn. These were not mere ornamentation. Covered in a sheath of sharp keratin, like the horns of modern cattle, they were lethal weapons, capable of inflicting catastrophic wounds. Anchored to a robust, low-slung body powered by immense muscles, Triceratops was a defensive powerhouse, perfectly equipped to stand its ground against the tyrant king. For decades, this titanic confrontation was the stuff of scientific speculation and popular imagination. But paleontology is a science built on hard evidence, and in recent years, the fossil record has begun to speak. The bones of these ancient rivals serve as a geological crime scene, preserving direct evidence of their violent encounters. Paleontologists have unearthed Triceratops fossils bearing the unmistakable tooth marks of Tyrannosaurus. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence comes from a Triceratops specimen nicknamed Big John. Its frill bears a keyhole-shaped wound, a puncture mark that perfectly matches the size and shape of a T-Rex tooth. Crucially, the bone around this injury shows signs of healing. This is not just evidence of an attack, it's evidence of a survivor. The Triceratops was bitten, fought back, and lived to graze another day. This single fossil transforms the narrative, proving that when these two titans clashed, the outcome was never guaranteed. It was a true battle, and sometimes the defender emerged victorious. Let us reconstruct the events that this fossil evidence suggests. A mature Triceratops, perhaps separated from its herd, is grazing at the edge of a cypress swamp. It is vigilant, but the dense undergrowth provides perfect cover for an ambush. Suddenly, the forest explodes into action. A 40-foot Tyrannosaurus bursts from the trees, a force of nature driven by hunger. It lunges, its primary target the vulnerable neck, aiming to sever the spinal cord. But the Triceratops reacts in an instant. It pivots its massive body, lowering its head to present a wall of bone and horn. The T-Rex's jaws snap shut, not on flesh, but on the solid shield of the frill, its teeth scraping and puncturing the bone. The herbivore, weighing as much as a bus, drives forward with immense force. It bellows, a challenge to the predator, using its horns to jab and push, keeping the tyrant's lethal bite at bay. The struggle is brief but cataclysmic. The T-Rex, realizing the risk of a mortal wound from the Triceratops's horns outweighs the potential reward, disengages. It retreats back into the forest, leaving the Triceratops battered but alive, a testament to its incredible defensive design. However, for every tale of survival written in healed bone, there are countless unwritten stories of failure. Tyrannosaurus rex was the apex predator for a reason. Its reign was built on successful hunts, and Triceratops was a primary food source. Further fossil discoveries confirm this grim reality. Paleontologists have found Triceratops pelvic bones with deep T-Rex bite marks that show no signs of healing. Clear evidence of a fatal attack or post-mortem feeding. Even more telling is the pattern of bites found on Triceratops skulls. Several specimens show extensive, powerful bite and pull marks concentrated on the frill. This wasn't a random frenzy. Scientists interpret this as methodical feeding behavior. The T-Rex would grip the frill with its immense jaws, using its powerful neck muscles to wrench the entire head from the body. This seemingly gruesome act had a clear purpose: to bypass the massive bony shield and gain access to the large, nutrient-rich muscles of the neck. It is a chilling insight into the predator's intelligence and efficiency, a reminder that in this Cretaceous duel, the tyrant king very often claimed its crown. This was more than a simple predator-prey relationship. It was a decades-long evolutionary arms race that shaped both combatants. The immense bite force and predatory tactics of Tyrannosaurus rex likely drove the evolution of the Triceratops's increasingly large and robust frill, its longer horns, and its powerful tank-like body. Every T-Rex that failed to secure a kill learned a harsh lesson, refining its hunting strategies for the next encounter. In turn, every Triceratops that survived an attack was a testament to the success of its defenses, passing those resilient genes to the next generation. This dynamic forged two of the most spectacular and advanced animals of their time. For millions of years, these titans were locked in a dance of life and death across the plains of ancient North America. Their epic struggle, a perfect balance of offense and defense, represents one of the most compelling chapters in Earth's history. a rivalry that continued until the very last moments before a cataclysm from the sky brought the Age of Dinosaurs to a sudden and dramatic close. For 2 million years, they were the undisputed titans of Western North America, Triceratops horridus. The name itself, meaning three-horned face, barely captures the majesty of this animal. Weighing up to 12 tons and stretching nearly 30 feet, it was a walking fortress of muscle and bone. Their world, the late Maastrichtian, was a lush subtropical paradise, a vast floodplain carved by winding rivers and blanketed in ferns, cycads, and flowering plants. Here they thrived. Large herds, numbering in the dozens, moved with a slow, deliberate confidence across the landscape. They were a keystone species, shaping the very environment they inhabited. Their powerful beaks could fell tree-sized cycads, creating clearings that allowed new plants to grow. The great frill, or shield, was not just for defense. It was a vibrant, dynamic billboard, likely flushed with color for display, species recognition, and establishing dominance within the herd. For the Triceratops, this was not a world of constant terror, but one they had mastered. This was the golden age of the horned dinosaurs, the apex of their long and successful evolutionary journey. They were the last and greatest of their kind. But even masters of their domain are subject to the whims of a changing planet. Far across the globe, in what is now India, a geological drama was unfolding on a scale almost beyond comprehension. The Deccan Traps, a colossal volcanic province, had begun to erupt, spewing millions of cubic miles of lava and choking the atmosphere with sulfur and carbon dioxide. The effects, though subtle at first, were global. The air carried a faint, acrid taste. Rain, now slightly more acidic, leached nutrients from the soil, placing stress on the very plants Triceratops depended on. The seasons became less predictable, the winters harsher, the summers hotter and drier. The great herds continued their ancient routines, foraging, migrating, raising their young. But the world was becoming less generous. The foliage was not as rich, the water sources less reliable. These were pressures that any species must face, the normal ebb and flow of planetary life. The Triceratops, with their robust physiology and adaptable foraging strategies, were well equipped to handle it. They were survivors. Yet they were unaware that this slow terrestrial change was merely a prelude to a far more abrupt and violent transformation from the heavens. Environmental pressures were not their only concern. Coexisting with these magnificent herbivores was one of history's most formidable predators, Tyrannosaurus rex. The relationship between these two icons was an evolutionary arms race played out over millennia. Every adaptation in one drove a counter-adaptation in the other. The Triceratops's horns grew longer and sharper, its frill thicker and more protective. The Tyrannosaurus's bite became stronger, its senses more acute. A confrontation between them was a spectacle of prehistoric power. But it was not a frequent occurrence. The tyrant lizard was an intelligent hunter, an opportunist that understood risk versus reward. A healthy adult Triceratops was perhaps the most dangerous prey on the continent. Attacking one head-on was a potentially fatal gamble. Instead, the predator would stalk the herd, testing its defenses, searching for a moment of weakness. A juvenile that strayed too far, an individual weakened by age or illness. Here we see that ancient dance unfold. A matriarch, positioning her immense three-horned skull between the hunter and her calf, becomes an immovable object. The Tyrannosaurus assesses, calculates, and often retreats. Survival was a game of strategy, not just brute force. As day turned to night, the world of the Triceratops transformed. Under a sky untainted by artificial light, the cosmos revealed itself in breathtaking clarity. The familiar constellations wheeled overhead, a celestial clock that had marked the passing of seasons for millions of years. But in these final generations, a new object appeared among the fixed stars. At first, it was an insignificant point of light, indistinguishable from countless others. But night after night, week after week, it grew imperceptibly brighter. It did not twinkle like a star, but shone with a steady, menacing intensity. To the creatures below, it was a curiosity at most, a strange new light in a familiar sky. They had no context for what they were seeing, no way to comprehend that this approaching visitor was a 10-kilometer-wide mountain of rock and ice, a messenger of doom from the depths of the solar system. It was closing the distance at over 40,000 miles per hour, a cosmic bullet aimed at the heart of their world. The planet's long, stable reign of the dinosaurs was counting down its final moments, and the harbinger of its end was hiding in plain sight.
The day it arrived began like any other. The sun rose over the fern prairies, and the Triceratops herds began to stir, their great bodies warming in the morning light. And then it happened. Not a sound at first, but a light. On the southern horizon, the sky flashed with an intensity that dwarfed the sun, a silent, searing blast of pure energy. In that instant, every creature that faced it was blinded. Seconds later, the heat wave arrived. A wave of thermal radiation, moving at the speed of light, washed over the land, raising the air temperature by hundreds of degrees. Surface water evaporated instantly. Dry leaves and grass burst into flame. The world was set ablaze. What followed was the sound, a continuous, deafening roar that was not merely heard but felt deep within the bone. As the superheated atmospheric shockwave expanded outwards from the impact site in the Gulf of Mexico, the very ground heaved and rolled in seismic waves, throwing the mighty animals from their feet. The sky, once blue, began to darken, not with clouds, but with a terrifying curtain of vaporized rock and debris hurtling back down from space. The fires burned for months, but the greater catastrophe was what followed. The immense quantity of dust, soot, and sulfur aerosols thrown into the stratosphere by the impact created an impenetrable shroud, enveloping the entire planet and blocking out the sun. A perpetual twilight descended upon the Earth, an impact winter that would last for years. Temperatures plummeted, freezing the scorched landscape. Without sunlight, the foundation of life, photosynthesis, ground to a halt. The lush greenery that had sustained the world of Triceratops withered and died, replaced by a carpet of ash and decay. For the survivors, life became an agonizingly slow descent into starvation. Triceratops, a bulk-feeding herbivore requiring hundreds of pounds of vegetation each day, was now in a world devoid of food. Their powerful beaks, once perfect for snipping cycads, now scraped uselessly at barren, ash-covered ground. The herds dwindled. The young and the old were the first to perish. The survivors grew gaunt and weak, their magnificent frills and horns a hollow mockery of their former power. They were ghosts, wandering a dark, frozen tomb of a world they no longer recognized. In the end, not even their immense strength and resilience could save them. In a cold, dark forest of skeletal trees, the last Triceratops took its final breath. Its 2-million-year dynasty, a story of success and adaptation, was extinguished not by a predator or a rival, but by a cosmic catastrophe it could never have evolved to withstand. The three-horned titan was gone. For millions of years, silence reigned. But the story of Triceratops was not over. It was merely dormant, waiting to be unearthed. Today, in the stark beauty of the Hell Creek Formation, paleontologists brush away the dust of 66 million years to reveal their legacy. Every bone, from a single horn to a complete skeleton, is a chapter in their epic tale. These fossils tell us of their growth, their diet, their battles, and their environment.
They are a tangible link to a lost world, allowing us to reconstruct the life and times of one of Earth's most magnificent creatures. The final stand of the Triceratops was a tragedy on a planetary scale, but their story, etched in stone, has granted them a form of immortality.